there seems to be quite an intense frustration growing in these kind of this polarity, an intense frustration within the community of people that are very happy with the narrative, very happy with the idea of the virus being deadly and the government lockdown being for our protection. So the growing frustration for these people is the other people not adhering to that lockdown, even though actually mostly, in fact everybody is, but they don't agree with it. The people that are really getting upset are the people who seem very afraid at the whole idea that this is not normal and it's not for them. They've been lied to. The very concept that they might be lied to is really not something that can be entertained, and that's okay. That's how people are staying safe, by narrowing their vision to what they know, and then anything outside of that is considered conspiracy theory. And I want to break that down because I've posted quite a bit about it. So conspiracy is when the people conspire to do something, usually nefarious or usually for a particular gain or aim that is detrimental to one or a number of parties. And so this idea that anybody could be doing anything, any big picture conspiracy of anything that the Gates Foundation or governments or organisations that have become apparent that they're involved, like the World Health Organization, people that we have kind of wanted to believe and trust and be the child to the parent to. And that's the problem, is children in a child-parent relationship are really not given permission to question the parent. So they maintain the narrative because it's safer, and they don't evolve a sense of self and a sense of self-awareness. And children are meant to grow up and form their own opinions, and usually the rites of passage is that you disagree with your parents and you sort of fuck off and you go and live your own life, and then you come back together as parents, as equals. And if you're in a governmental system that is a kind of nanny state, or a state where you have relinquished responsibility and you want someone else to look after you, then that is part of the problem. So in order to embrace any idea that is new and that is different and is outside, takes an enormous amount of self-awareness. And I'm not saying this in a patronizing way. It's a very small percentage of the curve that are ahead of that, of that 50th percentile of the average person. And it doesn't make them better, it just makes people in a different place, a different awareness, a different purpose for being here, a different role to play, a different part of that consciousness and that conscious awareness. And that's all fine. So my issue is those people that are patronizing about people having a different view, that something must be wrong with them if they see things differently. And Itzhak Bentov said in an interview, he was a great philosopher, he wrote the Stalking the Wild Pendulum and A Cosmic Book, an amazing guy, and he drew this distribution curve of consciousness, and he said to the guy interviewing him, this is the kind of middle main people, and these people on the back end of the bell curve are the less sort of consciously aware, and the people ahead here are the more consciously aware, and the curve's moving, the curve is shifting, the awareness is moving. But he said, where do you think you'll find those people at the head of the curve there? So the interviewer said, well, I expect they will be, they'll be the astronauts and the professors, and they'll be in universities and places like that. And Itzhak Bentov said, no, they will be the people in the mental homes and the asylums and institutions. Because the problem is that if you do see things differently, if you can't land that, if you can't bring that back into the collective, the bigger part of the bell curve, and exist within the frame and references of reality of the general norm, then you will be considered to be mentally unstable and unwell. Now, some people that have got severe trauma and severe shock can go out of that particular kind of point of reference of consciousness and do struggle to come back. And this is what we see in sort of psychological behaviours and patterns and what we call illness. I think the way to describe an illness is that if it's affecting your quality of life, then you may want to, but that's when people start to seek help for that. But again, it still doesn't make anybody else's reality any more real than the experience of any individual person. But when you get a collective that is growing in awareness and awakening, and there is a pull on that front end, you're going to get a resistance. So the other side of the frustration is the frustration from the people that are on that leading edge, and on the edge where, the bit that I get frustrated with, and the bit that I kind of tend to respond to people who are being patronizing, is that when people reference my view, and they reference it as, not acceptable, as dangerous, or as following fake information, or as following things from a not a very good source, they think that that's all I've looked at, whereas they are contained within their narrative. I came from that narrative. I was one of those people that believed only that, and then but the questions couldn't be asked, so I just started to ask questions. And people that explore new ideas and new realities really simply just start asking questions, and they really start asking to try to seek and find. So they're just truth seekers. They're just people with enough intelligence and awareness to say, okay, I get that. I can get how that narrative might work, and I can certainly get how the collective is agreeing on that. But these things don't make any sense. And the more you ask questions, you have to grow outside of even the initial periphery of that research, and you have to really start to kind of go off at tangents and then come back in again with that information to form a bigger picture. I called it breadcrumb research. I guess that's just what proper research is. But not being a researchist or a researcher, I've been learning this through a genuine curiosity. So when somebody is kind of in this small bubble saying, yeah, but you're over there in that bubble, they think I haven't been there, or that part of the bubble they're in is not part of my broader, wider understanding. So if I present something, it isn't because I've just gone down a train of thought, found some hooey bit of information and gone, oh my God, that sounds amazing or terrifying, or yeah, it must be that. And then present that as an alternative view. It's not just an alternative view. It is one that is part of an all-encompassed, broader platform of research. And I've brought in all, and I accept them all. I'll take them all in, because if you're rejecting of anyone's view, you won't integrate it and understand your own relationship to it and your own part in it and your own part with it. So I am very open to people who come along and go, have you thought about that? How have you found that out? Where does that information come from? Have you had a cross-reference or a verify? If you just come along and go, you best be careful, or I think you're not, I think you're getting information from the wrong source, or anything that suggests that that doesn't have a clue as to how I am going about understanding what's going on, is simply just projecting their own limitation. And that's the bit that frustrates me. That's the bit that makes me sad, actually, that people can't just say, okay, well, I might not agree with it, but actually, maybe they got a point. You can disagree, and we can debate as much as you like, but I shall, defend everybody's right to have their own opinion. If your opinion limits the freedom of others, then I might challenge that opinion. Although, interestingly, I'm not going around challenging other people's views and opinions. I am just holding the integrity of my own. So I'm not going onto other people's platforms or posts, but just the odd one where somebody said something particularly patronising or particular bullshit in reference to myself or my view. I am simply expressing my own views and sharing my own research. Sometimes I do share something that I agree with a part of it, not all of it, but now more and more people are cross-referencing. The network is becoming much stronger and actually more stable and more secure, which is what is needed. So I don't really have much else to say other than trust your own curiosity. Be curious. If you stop being curious, why have you stopped? Who told you to stop being curious? Who is it? Whose opinion have you taken and gone, yeah, that's enough now. That all makes sense. I completely agree with you. What you say is my truth. And then closed off to any other possibilities, any other angles of the vastness of experience. Because it's the vastness of experience that is consciousness. Consciousness is everybody's view. And everybody's view makes this reality. It's not that mine is better than someone else's. Whoever disagrees with me, it's both of our views that is making this reality. And I believe we are in a huge step of evolution and a huge, challenging, chaotic growth period where you could say we're going from the caterpillar to the butterfly. There's a complete reconfiguration when that happens. It's not just a little bit of a step forward. It's a complete breakdown of what was to become something new. I am quite amazed how many seemingly open-minded, intelligent, what I would have said potentially forward-thinking, and certainly people within the energy therapy world, people that you would expect, I suppose, to be more embracing of alternative views, other people's concepts and beliefs and values and perceptions of reality, to be so small-minded and then rather than say this is what I believe to be going on, find the only way to express what they think is going on is by trying to belittle other people's views. I've had my odd frustration, and I've basically said, if you're one of the people that is protecting a narrative and not looking outside of that, then I think you're the problem. Now, I stand by that. It doesn't mean your view isn't, I don't respect your view. What I am challenging is that the part of your view that makes you think no one else has a view or a valid view or a valid perception. It's that arrogance that I'm challenging, and that is the bit that I will kind of stand on my soapbox about and say, sorry, it's really bright. So this is just a reflection on how frustration is growing for everybody. It's good because you actually see that if you have a real healthy emotional spectrum, then you can process those feelings and emotions and understand what it is that you're feeling and why that's arising. I don't know what's going to happen and what's going to come, but I do know that I will be ready to step up and be counted when the shift begins and when it becomes, when people's windows of tolerance reach very, very strong boundaries and reach very, very strong difficulties and challenges, I shall be ready. And that is because I believe that everybody has the right to have their view. You have a right to decide that you want a vaccine if you want it. You don't have a right to force a vaccine on somebody that doesn't want it, especially when there is masses amount of information, increasing amounts of information as to why they don't work and why they are actually not just don't work, but are actually damaging to health. And I had somebody comment earlier about vaccines. See, my point is that yes, they're a necessary evil in some instances, but they're not a necessary thing. If you spent the money, it's poverty that creates the symptoms. It's lack of food, lack of water, lack of shelter, lack of hygiene, and safe food and protection and, you know, being in fear, being at war. These are the things that cause disease. But the people that make that happen for these poor countries then swoop in and sell to the government their vaccines or do other things with their vaccines. If they spent the same amount of money on the poverty, help people with their natural human rights and their natural resources, and actually respected them and gave them all of those things and the same opportunities, then we wouldn't need vaccines. Okay, so the people that make the solutions are making the problem, but the people that are perpetuating it are the people that are not asking questions. And that is because it's very, very comfortable in the victim role, and it's very, very comfortable in the child role. Otherwise, you have to start to take responsibility for yourself and your health and what it is that is at the root cause of your illness, instead of looking outside for someone else's permission. So we've inherited this. This is you know, this has been passed on. And taking back control and power is, well, not everybody wants it, and then that's very, very apparent. So, because some people have built little castles within that, right? You know, within the authority, people have built their own little castles and their own roles and positions, and they know who they are within that. So if you challenge that, hey, they don't know who they're going to be. If they're not needed anymore, what now? So we have a systemic inherited problem that I think is gonna explode in everyone's face at some point. Let's see what happens. So I encourage you to research outside of the points of reference you already have, bring it all together, don't reject anything, take it in. Yes, that sticks, that fits, that resonates with me, that doesn't even register, that's not for me, that jars with me, what is it about that jars with me? Okay, it's a challenge to this value or that value, but I get it and I can see how that fits or that doesn't fit. You know, if you're rejecting, then you're not in a position of flowing and growing, which is really what we all need to do right now. So well done to the guys that are really doing that, and doing that very isolated, in very isolated circumstances where their families, friends, contacts don't appreciate it. You will notice a greater and greater resistance, as you know, it's like being pushed towards the edge of a cliff. Okay, people are starting to dig their heels in and go, la 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 la, I don't want to hear that, don't want to hear that, you're the problem. Okay, it's going to be more of that. So we can be okay with that. We don't have to hate people for that. We can be okay with that. But at some point, we're all approaching the cliff edge. So yeah, let's see what happens.